What's up, everybody, and welcome to your Tuesday night NWSL Live. I'm Jordan Angeli. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. This has been so much fun as we get into now middle almost of June, and we get to see so many NWSL games week in and week out. And we get to sit here and talk about them. So when I say we, it's not just me, it's Jeff Kassouf and Lori Lindsey joining me as always. And it's so fun to talk to them. Jeff, we missed Lori last week. We didn't get to have Lori a part of our chat. We had Lou Barnes and Jess Fishlock along with us. It was so much fun to chat with them, but we missed Lori Lindsey. It was hard not to have her along. She has joined back with us here today. So how are you guys doing? That you do, Lori. You always are keeping things exciting. I don't see you guys on the screen yet, so I'm going to give it a second. Here we go. There's Lori. Lori's keeping us on our toes, is what she likes to do. But it's good to see you, Lori. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. Good to be back.
Yeah, you missed a good one last week, Lori. It was fun to talk to those two, and they brought a lot of um, some laughter, I think, which was well needed last week. But this week, I think we need to start off with the news of the day, you guys. It has been an exciting day in NWSL as we welcome yet another team into the 2022 season. It's San Diego, confirmed expansion team joining next year alongside Angel City FC. I'm going to go to you first, Jeff. What was your initial reaction with this big announcement here today?
Yeah, I mean, I think you had Jill Ellis on the call, and obviously, I think that's maybe a signal of intent. Jill Ellis taking over as president of this new team and building out the team on and off the field. So obviously, I think anybody watching this probably is aware of her coaching resume of two World Cup titles, but she talked about a different challenge and. Now she'll be hiring a coach and hiring a GM and overseeing some stuff off the field and having kind of a wider involvement, which she talked about. So I think some interesting things to keep an eye on, and she talked about through some of like the mentorship programs that she's done as a coach and wanting to sort of extend that network of really putting an emphasis on having a woman GM, a woman coach, and giving opportunities, and kind of extending that network. So I think exciting to see where that goes. And, I think starts a new era in SoCal next year, obviously, with two teams
Yeah.
in relative proximity.
Are we calling a rivalry already? Is
Yeah,
it one of those?
yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're gonna call it. We're gonna call it
You
rivalry
know,
already.
Angel City's like, okay,
Ex-
it's on.
Excuse us. It was supposed to be our big entrance, but you had to come and crash the party. Lori, you played in San Diego the last time there was a women's professional team down there, and that was way back in WUSA time. Why San Diego is such a great place to have a women's soccer team?
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, I mean, you're by the beach, you got great weather, and you're stone's throw away from Angel City that we talked about, LA. So you already have a built-in rivalry, and honestly, the fans are going to be excited. There's a USL team there that Landon Donovan's coaching, heading up. And they're building a fan base, and then to add in an NWSL team as well into the mix while things are growing, while the interest is there, I think is incredibly important and exciting. And I think that's what we have all said, right, about Angel City coming in, these teams coming in, Racing Louisville, just the excitement around the game, not only here but globally as well.
Mhm. Are you already anticipating this expansion draft, you guys? And how crazy this is going to be? Who gets the first pick? What is this going to look like? Lori, I know you covered that last year in Louisville, but this is going to be a whole nother level.
Yeah, and Jeff might know a little bit more about this from the call as well, but I was already seeing today too that they are already able to start in conversations with players, and so it'll be interesting to see what goes on even in just in the coming weeks. Signings, if you're going to start looking for some trades potentially, or what that looks like, how you're going to round out your roster, because I think that's the toughest part, right? Is figuring out how you're going to Sorry, I think there's some lawn work going on outside. But how you're going to round out your roster in the first year. So,
Yeah.
I think Lori's lobbying for on-site expansion draft in LA or San Diego is what I'm hearing.
Halfway through, right dead in the middle, right? That's where we're going on the highway. What is it? The highway, Interstate 5,
Yeah.
right there.
That'll take you like 6 hours to drive.
No, this is an RV show. We're getting in a bus. We're going from one spot to the next. Coaches both and GMs in the RV. We're taking a trip from one stadium to the next. How about that? Jeff, what else did you learn today that you said something earlier actually that I think is important and maybe something for us to scratch our heads about. You said female GM, female coach.
Yeah, I mean that's the stated intent from Jill Ellis. I think, I mean, like I've covered her career for a while now, and even as U.S. coach, and she's spoken at conventions, national conventions each year about just expanding that network, and she's in a couple of different mentorship programs. One of them is U.S. Soccer's, and just wanting that to be a larger, I guess support system is maybe not the best term, but just a larger, I guess, network, for lack of a better term, in terms of women coaches that are getting opportunities and getting a shot at some jobs that, you know, maybe they haven't had a fair crack at in the past, or whatever, you know, whatever the reasoning might be. So she kind of shared an anecdote on that call earlier today of, you know, she didn't say who, but somebody said to her, you know, are there enough high quality or qualified, you know, women coaches for this position? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. We're going to go get them. So, you know, I think it'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, Angel City hired Eniola Luco, and I guess a similar-ish role as Ellis, a different title, sporting director. But, you know, I think it'll be an interesting sort of build process for those two teams.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be hard for them really just to get coaches, to get players to come play there. I mean, San Diego, LA.
Very difficult.
Rough. It's going to be hard. But anyways, huge news, and really great to see the league in general expand from 10 teams this year to 12 next year. You think about the opportunities that brings for players to go from one team and then become a star on a different team, or go from not playing into a starting role, and you get to see a little bit more of the depth of this league. And I think it's going to call a lot of players from overseas to looking, which we're already seeing, right? To looking and saying, hey, I want to play in NWSL because it is a stable league with really good competition where we can go week in, week out with not only challenging ourselves, but getting better and creating an impact. So I think so many good things to look forward to with these two new teams coming next year. But should we get to what's happening on the field? Get a little into that. Yeah, you guys are good with that. Okay. We're going to go straight into the scores of the weekend. I'm just going to go through most of them, and then we'll hit on a couple of games that we want to talk about specifically. So Chicago Red Stars 1-0 over North Carolina Courage. I think the big story in that one is Courage had a franchise low 1 shot on goal. Yeah, I can't even believe that is something that we are saying, knowing the Courage and their history. Gotham FC takes down OL Reign 1-0 on Umanu with a goal. It felt like Reign were knocking on the door. We'll get to talking about that a little bit more in just a few. Portland 3-0 over Racing Louisville. Michelle Beto standing on her head and still giving up 3 goals. It was an absolutely ridiculous performance from her. She is just continuing to show how good she is in net. And valuable, I think, even with that scoreline, just who she is has been big time for them. Houston Dash 1-0 over Kansas City. Kansas City sporting those unis. You got to love the colors. We're bringing in some bright colors in these new uniforms. And then Washington Spirit 1-1 with Orlando Pride, which is what we're going to talk about because the Pride still are unbeaten. I don't know, guys. I don't think we thought we'd get to this point and say the Pride are still unbeaten. We've been wanting to say that, right? And wanting to see more from Orlando Pride. So when we think about that game, let's talk specifically about that game, Spirit Orlando. It was in DC. Jeff, I want to go to you first and actually talk a little bit about the Spirit and what you saw in their performance, because they were successful going forward, and a lot of that had to do with how they were playing in the channels.
Yeah, I thought wide play was really good. The goal that they scored was service from Kelly O'Hara on that left side, and I think the goal will probably get the obvious literal highlight. But throughout that match, she was 1v1 with Ali Riley, which was kind of a cool little throwback and a couple little viral moments there. And then she was also, I think her effectiveness there was probably shown in that, she really forced Marta to have to pinch back and wide. And that's obviously not necessarily the most effective way that you want Marta playing if you're Orlando and having a track like that. So, I think that really kind of showed how much she was dictating on that left side. And, I think certainly that wide play was successful for them and their whole back line, really. I think Richie Burke said after the game that he thought it was Emily Sonnet's best game. So I think that they got a strong performance from a back line, which we've talked about on this show, of wanting to see that back line from 19 and 20. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that again.
Which is important, right, for the Spirit. When you think about both those players that you just mentioned, well, both those players might not be with the team very shortly. So it's a little difficult to really latch on if you're a Spirit fan and say, all right, things are moving in the right direction. But even the confidence that builds to see things like that happening and coming together, I think has to be beneficial for the team. Lori, on the other side, Orlando, I said unbeaten, right? What is that? I mean, it's a huge smile on your face when I say that.
Well, listen, I don't think anybody expected this.
Yeah.
Throughout the Challenge Cup and then now in this regular season. So credit to them. And I think it's this, it's what momentum brings. You get off, they needed a win. They build on that, and you see a team of like some veteran players that we were waiting for to come together. Mm-hmm. And they're gutting out performances. And quite frankly, they needed this because, we knew there's all the talk about Sydney Leroux, Alex Morgan have been playing together, Marta have all been playing together. Now they've been finally together. Now there's going to be an international break. And for them to collect these points early on, it has been talked about. Some teams have talked about it more than others, but to build, because these games matter. And they're going to matter even more than I think some teams think, even as far down the line as October. So for this team to be able to come in and away, play in the heat, that was talked about a lot. And, they get a point or a goal from Taylor Korniak was massive as well. But as Jeff said, I think with the Washington Spirits, still playing and still putting pieces together. And then there's an Orlando Pride team that are capitalizing on, an Aubrey Bledsoe giveaway that resulted with Marta being able to pick off the ball and then find Korniak. But outside of those three, I am so sorry if it's not my internet, that it's some random lawn work that's happening. And so, always some giggles on this show. Yeah, and I think that's what you find, a team that's working together, a team that's getting the most. And we were talking off screen about this, and the last thing I'll say is, early on we were like, this team needs to start playing to their strengths. And credit Mark Skinner to be able to try different things, wanting to play a different style of possession, building out of the back. And then finally it was like, listen, that right now is not working. We're going to go direct. We're going to go vertical. They got some points that they needed. They got confidence under their belts. They're eating donuts after every game. That was saying, listen, I want to be on that team. And then now you can start to build and start to work in pieces now that you've built a little bit of a buffer for yourself and get back to ways that maybe you want to see that adds a little variety to your play. And we're starting to see that against Kansas City and even against the Washington Spirit, where they're trying to play a little bit more now, but they also have that versatility. If they need to, we're going to go direct and get and open up space underneath.
Yeah, and in general, that is what makes teams so dangerous, right? The unpredictability of saying, "Hey, we can play a couple of different ways, and this is how we want to play." And we've had many conversations about Mark Skinner and about Orlando Pride and in the way that he wants his team to play. But when you add something different and say, "All right, well, we're going to throw this in the mix and see if we can win direct," well, now teams don't know what to expect, and so I think you're exactly right. Fun game to watch there between the Spirit and the Pride, 1-1. We got to say that leading up to the goal, wasn't it? No, it was early in the game, that turn from Trinity Rodman. She's just continuing to do fun little things, and we're going to get her on the show eventually, right? We're going to get her on here. She's going to be a guest on this show. So, but let's go on to a couple more talking points. Let's talk about two more things before we get into the next segment here. I'm going to go to you first, Jeff. I mentioned it earlier. OL Reign were knocking on the door. It seemed like it was one of those games. Lori, you and I have both been in it. Jeff, you probably have been in one of these games as well, where it just felt like nothing you were going to do was going to put the ball in the back of the net. Have they found their groove, and how much has Rose Lavelle added to that?
Well, Lavelle definitely. I mean, I think she's been at or maybe near her best in these couple of games that she's played with the Reign so far. And we saw that against Gotham. I think everything except getting on that score sheet, as you said, and really unlucky not to. I mean, Megan Rapinoe hitting the post, that 7th minute 50, 60-yard dribble from Lavelle finds Rapinoe, and then, a touch from Haricic and it's off the post. I think, knocking on the door. I've had opportunities. I think long term, obviously Lavelle is someone you're going to build around. And, I think she's been showing. I think it's good. It's great to see if you're a U.S. fan, obviously. I think she said and would probably tell you that, it wasn't the most ideal season at Man City per se. And, these are in many ways, in that sense, I guess, important games before the Olympics. And, I think if you're a U.S. fan looking at that, you're like, yeah, that's what I'm looking to see in Tokyo. And I would think that's probably what she's thinking as well, in terms of at least the start to this Reign career. So, been really good, exciting to see. I think, the Lavelle Rapinoe connection has been, I think we're already kind of seeing what that could be. It's obviously entertaining. And I think, obviously waiting on some big pieces that we've talked about on the show before that are coming that should add the attacking firepower. And then, this week's news of Alana Cook coming over from PSG on a permanent transfer really shores up and addresses that back line as well. So I think, obviously, as we've said, the challenge is still putting it together, but the pieces are certainly there. Yes, the Olympic break and maybe some absences there, but the pieces are there over the long season, and we're starting to see a little bit more of that.
Yeah. There's still a lot of games after that after the Olympics are over. So
not a break, I guess, but Olympic time.
Yeah, just players being away. Lori, for you, last question about the weekend from me has to do with Chicago. Big win over North Carolina. I mentioned held North Carolina to just one shot on goal, which was their team's lowest ever value in that statistic. Are they back on track?
In some ways, I think they are. Outside of that initial game against Portland where it's 5-0, they have been good and they've been solid defensively. They made it difficult to break themselves down. They shifted some players around in the back line. We've seen Sharples come in, Gordon moved to the left-hand side. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously their midfield has always been a constant in there of similar players that we're used to seeing. So yes, and also there still has to be another level, because I think it's going to be difficult as these other teams, most notably as Jeff was just talking about, OL Reign, as these teams start to get even bigger players. And if something comes through the wall, everybody, sorry, it just feels like this is wild. But as these teams continue to build their roster, whether it's before the Olympic break, right, or just players leave for the Olympics in general, or after, Chicago is somebody that's going to have to develop, I think, something more in the attack, right? We're starting to see Malpew, and this is a team outside of, obviously we know Julie Ertz is injured, but outside of Tierna Davidson and Alyssa Nair going to Olympics, they pretty much have their solid core, which is going to be beneficial, and potentially still Malpew, but they'll have her at least throughout this month. So I think that bodes well for them throughout. But I think if you're looking at Kalia Watt, continues to show how she can create chances, make other players better around her. But there is just this missing piece that in terms of the finishing that I think Chicago still needs to sort out in terms of game in and game out to be a real true threat. But yes, really starting to put the pieces together. And another team that I think is got together and said, I don't care what outsiders are saying, we're going to get this together and we're going to start playing together and come together as a unit. And we're starting to see that.
And if we're learning anything about NWSL this year, there's a lot of announcements all the time about things that are going on, right? So Chicago could be the next big announcement with a new player coming in.
And I wanted Jeff to say it too, because there was something funny the other day after the OL Reign. They're like, "Oh, they're not happy with the performance. Here's another signing, everybody." It's like new players all the time. Here's another one. Here's another one.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot on tap, I think, in NWSL through the rest of this year. But as for the weekend recap, that's all we have for you. We mentioned it's nice to have Lindsey back with us. And next, in our next segment, we have Marisa Pilla back with MP3. So we're going to be back just after this quick break. And we're going to bring Marisa in and see what she has to tell us. So stick around, everybody.
Excellent.
Welcome back, everybody. NWSL Live. And in this segment, we're bringing back MP3. So excited to have Marisa Pilla back with us. She had an off weekend, and I just don't even know what she did with herself. This probably was such a foreign thing for her because what you guys have 3 games in like 8 days that you had on TV there. And as I wait here, I'll give it one more second here to bring in Marisa in. But that must have been such a weird feeling to go from so many games into this area where you're like, okay, now I have a weekend. What do people do on weekends? I can't quite remember this anymore. So, Marisa, it's good to see you and good to have you on the show.
I was a little MIA the last 2 weeks, and I was recovering from the stretch of 3 games in 8 days, flying here, there, and everywhere, and staying on the road and ordering an absurd amount of Uber Eats. So I feel like single-handedly I'm keeping local couriers in business.
One, isn't it kind of nice to like be doing the things again?
Yes.
Yes. 2, I did see some of your Uber Eats, and you got Joe's. Is it Joe's Barbecue?
Yes, I think.
And
yeah, it was great. I mean, I probably missed some of like the ambiance and like it was obviously delivered, so it wasn't like super fresh, but like I mean, I ate it in bed, so that's the level of crime I'm working with right now. It's kind of the life I live on the road, but it was really good. It was some of the best mac and cheese I've ever had in my life.
Well, not the thing I thought you were going to say, but I love it, the honesty. Go to the barbecue joint for the mac and cheese.
I'm always about the sides.
Yeah, it's an important part of the meal.
Yes.
Marisa, I love that we get to talk to you about the things. You do all this research, and it's cool on social media. We get to see you prep for game days. And some of the stuff that you prep, you never get to talk about. So we're going to go to North Carolina first. And you have a couple of different stories you want to talk about there for your MP3 segment. And tell us where you want to start.
Sure. I'd love to start with Merritt Mathias because, I mean, what a great story having her come back this year. And I was able to catch up with her a couple weeks ago. I believe it was still in the Challenge Cup. And she's just such a great person to talk to regardless. But she offered so much insight into that injury that she had, that devastating ACL injury in 2019. She told me it was the first major injury she's ever had in her career, and she considered herself lucky. She said, I know I'm a unicorn to be this age and not have suffered a knee injury up until then. But she said that recovery, Jordan, I'm sure you know, was one of the hardest things she ever had to do, but it made her so mentally and physically stronger. But really one of the coolest things I think she brought out of that period in her life was being able to trust her body and listen and be more in tune to her body, because she said it was just after the 2020 Challenge Cup and her surgery had already been done. She's still, she's like 6 months, 8 months into the recovery process at this point last summer. And she just still didn't feel right. She knew she didn't feel right. And she insisted on another surgery. She said, the doctor was like, listen, we fixed everything, there's nothing left. And she said, no, like I feel it. Like I know there's something wrong. So she insisted on having a scope done. And sure enough, they found small tears and fraying on her meniscus, and it was rubbing so much. And that's why she knew. She knew, and she trusted herself. And she said she feels like she's in a space right now, just as a person, where she has the confidence to speak up, because we all know how kind of scary it can be going to the doctors and insisting that something is wrong and being told that we're fine. And she said coming out of that experience, immediately following that surgery, she felt so much more confident and was able to trust her body 100%, which we know coming back from an injury, that's kind of the biggest battle, not playing scared, not playing timid. And she was able to do that. So she said, when you're away from the game so long, you just feel so grateful to be back. And I think she's taking that gratitude and that strength and confidence she learned through that process in stride now in this season. Great story. Yeah. a little flair. So, I mean, Davinia, it's like, what do you really say other than having to say her name? But she truly is like magic. Watching her play, watching her in her element, and you talk to so many different people about her, and she just possesses so many things that you really can't teach. It's not something you can bring out of somebody. So I was able to catch up with her. I actually was talking with her last year about this, and I said, how do you develop such creativity? Because a lot of time, you can't teach creativity. Either you're creative or you're not. Either you feel it or you're not. And she said, it really just stems back to her childhood. And she plays with that same passion that she had when she was a little girl. She said soccer was everything. Everywhere she went, she had a ball at her foot. If she was dribbling through the streets, if she was dribbling through her house, she had that. And she said kind of like her neighborhood was her stage. She was able to use the physical things in her real life as obstacles and things to play around. And she said she just kind of developed her style playing on the street where there were no rules and being able to adapt that. And she said one of the biggest things she works on now is focusing on trusting herself, because sometimes she has these ideas that come up in game and she might talk herself out of it of, oh, maybe that's not the best idea. But as we see, I mean, most of our ideas are pretty great. They land, I would say, 9 out of 10 times. So, she's really thankful to have a head coach in Paul Riley who has complete confidence in her ability. I mean, who wouldn't? But just to be able to have this, and I've talked to some of her teammates too, like Kristen Hamilton, and she said, the things she's able to do are kind of otherworldly, and you can't try to copy it, but it makes you feel like a kid again, and it makes you want to play with that freedom too. So she kind of inspires everyone else on the field to play with that freedom that she has on the ball.
Yeah. I can just imagine her. I have this visual of her back home in Brazil with the ball, like 1-2ing off the wall around somebody walking towards her, or like dribbling around stop signs and landmarks that are like poles on the street. I can envision that. And we're all for Davina, you trying anything. So when you try to talk yourself out of it, you talk yourself back into it, girl, because
try everything.
We want to see it.
We love it.
I love that, Marisa. One more thing to round out your MP3. Where are you going to take us with this one? I'm
going to take you to Houston with Shay Groom. And Shay has been such an interesting person to follow through her career because she's bounced around a lot. And when I talked to her during this Challenge Cup, she said when she joined the Dash, it was her third team in 3 years. So she never really felt settled. And she said, to be honest, she thought Houston would mark the beginning to the end of her career. That's kind of where she was mentally. Like, okay, like I'm moving around so much, I can't find my footing, I can't find my place. And then instead, she said the team helped her kind of hit the reset button on her career and how she saw herself. She said she learned to love soccer again, which is, it's always kind of bittersweet to hear people say that because you're happy that they love it, but it makes you sad because you realize like there was a point where you didn't. And that's heartbreaking because you got into this because you love it and you're extremely talented. And to lose that, I'm sure makes it so much harder to push on those all those hard days of training and games. So it was really interesting to hear her talk about how much immediately she kind of felt like this is different here. This is different not only the culture-wise, because we know so much about how James Clarkson stresses mental health and taking care of his players, and but also personally. She's like, I felt like a different player, and she said she knows as soon as she got there, James Clarkson told her he had a vision for her, and she said she finally felt like she was given the freedom to be me again, and she said Houston really feels like her home in this league, something that she really didn't feel like she had throughout her career.
That's good. Too, just speaking from experience, that you get into this pro lifestyle and you do feel like a commodity sometimes. And if you're Shay Groom and you've gone 3 teams in 3 years, I totally understand those feelings that she would have. And it's cool that you got to dive into that with her and get to understand more about what makes Houston feel like home and maybe the beginning of something great and not the end. So,
exactly, yeah.
Marisa, I always love chatting with you and getting to hear all of the hard work that you put into this game. Hopefully you took some time off and you rested over the weekend.
It's like, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm all caught up on Real Housewives of New York. So I was like, what do people do, right? They watch that. And then I went out on Saturday, for the whole day. And I was like, okay, people do this. And now I'm like, but now what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a nice break. I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I'm already like, okay, I'm back out on the road on the 19th and I'm going to practice. So I'm planning ahead.
Also, I don't think we've talked to you since you have been chosen to go to the Olympics to report on women's soccer. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. And it's truly like such an honor. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime thing. And I grew up falling in love with the Olympics at a really young age. And to be able to be part of, their coverage and especially the U.S. women's national team, it's amazing. So I'm very humbled, very grateful. Really excited.
You're going to do great. You're going to represent the U.S. NWSL and the Olympics well. So thanks for your MP3. Thanks for joining us. And I just can't wait to hear more stories. So
thanks for having me, as always.
Of course. All right, we're gonna be back. We did some fan questions today, and I'm gonna ask Lori and Jeff a few of those just after this short break. Welcome back, NWSL Live Tuesday night. We're about to wrap up this show, and we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We are going to ask the fans. So I put a call out on Twitter, an hour and a half ago maybe, to try to see what you guys wanted to talk about. If you had questions for Jeff and Lori and myself, and we got some good questions. So why don't we bring Lori and Jeff back in, and we'll get this rolling. I love to just hear what's on the mind of women's soccer fans all around the world, really. The first one, we apologize because I know there's going to be some stuff coming up in the Twitch chat, and we want you guys to be interactive on the Twitch chat, but unfortunately today we cannot see the Twitch chat. So if you guys are talking about something and asking a question, we are not going to be able to see that. So these are all just coming specifically from Twitter. And I'm going to give it a second here and wait till Lori and Jeff join me back in the screen before we get to these three questions. And I think we've got some good ones, guys. There's going to be some good conversation around these few things. And while we're waiting, I should say this is something we wanted to mention anyways, but I'll wait till while we're waiting I can pop in here. Gaetan Tine, a big signing coming over from, I believe, Paris FC, signing with Gotham. So Gotham joining in that international game. Huge signing for them. Should be a really fun player to watch in NWSL. It is a loan, so it is going to be a temporary thing, but nonetheless, this is going to be fun. And I think we'll get them on here soon enough, and we can ask those questions. If not, do you want me to just answer all the questions? I might be able to. Guys, I don't know. Can you hear them if they're talking? Do you guys want to say hi? Oh, there they are.
Hi. Again, we're just keeping you on the edge of your seat.
You know what I felt like? You know when
you're pop in or not is the thing.
You know when you're just on I don't know, you're waiting on like a date and you're like, oh, is this person going to actually show up? And then you're just trying to scroll and like read the menu 85 times and I won't order a drink until they get here, you know. Well, that's what I just felt like.
We all have.
Yeah, that's what I just felt like. So thank you guys very much. Drama coming up. All right. Let's get to these fan questions from Twitter. We're going to go to Romel Diaz first, at Romel Diaz. We need an all-star event, please. And so that wasn't really a question, but I'm going to make it into a question because you guys know me. What would you guys see? Like if you're envisioning an all-star event, Lori, what do you see around an all-star event? What would you like to be included?
Yeah, I think a whole festival of a weekend. Let's make it into, shot contest. Let's have the all-star game. And what ultimately I would like, and this is a Philadelphia plug for Pro League, but I think we should do it at potential future NWSL franchises. So that's my plug for the day for a Philadelphia team to come into the league. But yeah, I think at any time that you can get a neutral site and get more exposure to the league would be amazing. And then, but we absolutely need an NWSL like all-star. Get it back. Yeah. We decided 2010 was the last time. So come on, 11 years. Let's go.
Yeah. I was scratching my head because I was thinking, is Lori, what's Lori working on over there?
I need somebody to pop into my DM so I can get to work on something. Everybody that wants to be owner. Got
it. Perfect. Jeff, is there anything specific when you think of an all-star event weekend that you're like, ooh, this would be fun to implement?
Too many things. That's what I'm going to say. I mean, the 2010, so for starters, 2010 that Lori referenced, WPS, before the NHL did it, before the NBA started doing it, it was cool. The Pick'em style event, Team Abby versus Team Marta.
Yep.
That was WPS. The legacy of WPS, that was fun. I was at that in the Atlanta area. It was cool. I mean, obviously, you have to figure out ways to make it make sense to do it. But I would say, I do agree it should be a fun, like full weekend, and there's opportunities around that. But in terms of formatting, where my mind goes, I would say two sort of fun formats that maybe you could borrow a little bit from MLS concepts. One that will never happen, but I want to happen: NWSL All Stars versus U.S. Women's National Team. Figure out how to allocate people, who gets whom, whatever. We can figure that out. Would love to see it. Probably never going to happen. So backup option: NWSL All Stars versus, and take maybe that similar-ish MLS model, Club X, if that's a big club, or maybe like a Liga MX All Star, as we're seeing develop now on the men's side. I think that'd be really fun. You'd encapsulate some of the outer world, expose them to NWSL, vice versa. Be fun.
And clearly, Jeff has thought of this because
I've thought of it a few times.
75 answers, which I love. I love that. And you mentioned it was in Atlanta, which is funny, Lori, because you said test market, and Atlanta the next year in WPS became a team. So really interesting there, just that coincidence. But we're all for it. NWSL, we're for it. We're gonna put in the word with the people that we know and try to make that happen. Maybe next year. I mean, there are gonna be 12 teams. You're gonna be able to find 4 all-star teams from that. So let's move on. The next question from Paraleski at Paraluski. I don't know. I think I'm saying that wrong. Let's go back to those coaches. Big day in San Diego with that announcement of a new NWSL team next year. Throw out some possible coaches. So let's do that for both LA and San Diego. Possible coaches for those teams. Who comes first to mind, Jeff?
Ooh. I get on the spot for this one. Well, I mean, obviously we've seen some rumors, I guess, around the San Diego one, which I think is, a good candidate. Obviously, I think the question that we got specifically on that tweet was about, where should Laura Harvey be talked about in some fashion, and I think just from the idea of top NWSL coaches and I think like to respond to that question specifically, I mean, obviously I think she'd be someone to talk to or about. I think there'd be no shortage of people interested, especially in the LA gig. And you could take, I think that the fun thing there will be that you could probably pick from the 75,000 owners among them, a few coaches among them that are quite successful. So, I think that'll be an interesting one to see, who gets designated coach and other roles and how that plays out, because there'll be plenty of interest.
Is it Shannon McMillan who's in San Diego and coaching?
Yeah, she is a director of coaching. I can't remember what club, but yes.
But she's an investor in Angel City, right?
Listen, this is why the rivalry has already started.
Our new coach is an investor in the other team down the road. Oh my gosh. Lori, any other names that come to mind that you want to throw in there, or should we move on to the next?
No, I mean, listen, I could throw in a lot of names. I'm just curious on what it will look like, how you can move some of these coaches. Tiffany Roberts Haydax is like one that comes to mind that I would love to see in the pro ranks. Obviously, Central Florida's coach. But I think it depends on what the avenue is for a lot of these coaches and what their ultimate goal is in coaching. So there's a lot of things that would go on behind the scenes. But yes, I mean, with only one female coach, exciting what Jill Ellis and Jeff had talked about this earlier in the show about a pipeline to get more women coaches in the league. So that's kind of where my head turns, and you can look across college soccer for that and globally as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, last one. This one comes from an at Danielle Slayton. I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of her? Never heard of her.
Yeah, I know this.
So, no, we love that Danielle Slayton is chiming in here and asking a good question. Of course, she is a part of the Olympic coverage alongside Lori Lindsey too. Lori, I don't know if I've told you congratulations on that as well.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, same with Marisa. Super excited and ready to dive in.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're already diving in. I'm sure you've been watching a lot of games and working a lot, really hard already. So, but Danielle Slayton wrote in, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of us are curious about. Who will be the U.S.'s number 2 goalkeeper based on how they've been looking in NWSL teams? She said Campbell or Franch. Club play is so important for backup national team goalkeeper because it's where they get minutes. Who's it going to be? All right, Lori, I'm starting with you.
Okay. Listen, I'm going to go with AD Franch. First call up so far this calendar year, and I think credit to her play in it for Portland and then NWSL. The start of this season has really come up big for them and gotten herself healthy after missing 2020. And I go with AD French because I think Jane Campbell has been excellent as well. But I think when you're talking about a limited roster, only 2 goalkeepers, you have to go with the experience from previously. And AD French being on that 2019 World Cup team, what she brings to the locker room in terms of her personality goes so far in terms of success on the field as well. So I think either, I'm not trying to be neutral here necessarily, but I think either would be great picks and will absolutely do the job. But go with AD French.
Jeff? You agree?
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, even on the sense of, being relatively on the fence. I think both good options. And I think maybe the slight edge for me, I was going to say shot stopping, but I think Lori makes a fine point about just experience from the past, the past tournaments, or at least the World Cup, that is. So I think, slight edge. I don't think there's a massive difference and could certainly go either way. And I think, obviously not that anybody wants to be necessarily, but, there's the alternate roles as well, which we've talked about will still impact the NWSL side of things. So, and I want to hear Danielle Slayton's answer.
Yeah, Danielle, you need to tell us.
Danielle, chime in. We need to know. But I think the other thing is too, I'll add, is that Jane Campbell has proven to be very good on penalty kicks, and sometimes that's the area you need for a backup goalkeeper. So, Jeff, are we changing our answers?
That's a really good point. And I think if anybody watched that men's national team game the other day, they really, anything can happen. Zach Steffen has been the number 1 goalkeeper, and in a second, you have to replace your goalkeeper in a big game and know that goalkeeper can come up big in the biggest moment. And, that's on a Nations League level. You talk about an Olympic level, that's a different story, right? So it is. It's a tough decision. Gosh, I just don't know. Hopefully Vlaco gets some good news throughout this next few games that the women's national team has, so we can really start to narrow that down. But man, oh man, I do not envy those decisions. It's going to be a tough one. But it smiles for us because we're not making the decisions and we just get to talk about it. Lori, Jeff, thank you guys so much. It's been a fun NWSL Live. And, it's more fun with both of you here. Sorry, Jeff. But when you're both here, it's better. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for us. We will see you next week, Tuesday night on NWSL Live. You guys, see ya. Bye.